Founder and CEO. What does it say? Founder and CEO of Athena.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. I mean, so
no, I'm just curious. What kind of a company?
I'll come in here. I'll bring some truth to it. So basically,
what kind of company is Athena Layer?
If you want me to talk, then let me talk. I'm going to share some points.
I'm just asking you a question.
Oh, a little saucy.
What kind of company is that?
We're going to. So basically, this guy trying to pick
quick question
someone.
For you. I'm just going on LinkedIn. I'm looking for employees of this company, Athena Layer. Huh.
Well, let me talk. I'm making some critical points. So we have this guy who goes on national TV.
No. I'm asking you about. Let's talk about Athena Layer first. Let's talk about Athena Layer first, Nick. How many people work at Athena Layer? Because on LinkedIn. Hold on, real quick. Look, we can't talk at each other. You'll have your turn. I promise you. But
no, I'm gonna come on here. I'm gonna make my points, and then you can talk.
No. I think I'm gonna go first. You can go after.
Let me tell you hoodie for that.
Make factual points. All you can do is make it. You can always make this.
First. I'm gonna go first, Nick. How old are you, Nick?
What?
How old are you?
18 years old.
The context is very important. Okay. Your Twitter description
says 18 years old, still have greater moral values, higher intelligence, and higher net worth.
The context is very important. You think you have more wealth than me, is that right?
I have a very high net worth, and it's a lot higher than yours, buddy. Anyway, you're roadkilling the SEC highway, you're a scumbag, you're not very successful.
Hold on. Before you make your personal opinions.
No, these aren't opinions, they're facts. What you've done is criminal.
That's great.
Anyway, let me make my points. You only let her talk. Let me
shut the fuck up for a second.
So you're the CEO.
No, you're supposed to I come on here and talk, so I'm going to talk and I'm going to make some factual points.
Okay, you're not making points, you're making judgments. You have to use
logic
to make points.
What you did, you purchased a drug that's already existed, you hiked the price up on it beyond measure. You didn't do that for your research purposes, you did that to make a profit, which profit isn't a bad thing.
So what?
But when you're doing it at the expense of other people's lives, that's a critical mistake.
To have a conversation, you have to like raise a point that has sort of philosophical room for debate. Right, you're sort of stating things as if they're fact.
No, it is fact. You bought a drug that already exists.
Yeah,
and
just the price.
You didn't do any research for that drug. So that's a fact. There's nothing philosophical about that. That's a fact. Make more though.
You have to tell me what's wrong with raising the price of a drug.
Oh, there isn't. There's nothing wrong with raising the price. But what you did do is you raised the price at the expense of other people's lives, because what you did is you bought a drug that has no competition, and you knew there's no solutions that are going to be developed in the next year or over time that would take you to milk the profits, which would compete with that drug.
You still have to tell me what was done wrong.
What you did, well, in that regard, you didn't do anything illegal. What you did is morally wrong. But what you did was illegal.
You still have to tell me what's morally wrong, though.
Oh, there's nothing. I mean, I would say what you did is morally wrong because you're profiting off the lives of people and lack of research. There was no real research needed for you to purchase that drug. What you did is you took a drug that already exists. It already existed for many, many years. You bought it.
I think people know what happened. The question is, why do you think?
No, they don't. You skewed what's happened. If people look at the facts, it's very clear to see that what you did is you bought a drug. It's been around for over 40 years, and you know that. Do you agree or disagree? You know it's been around for more than
75 years.
75 years. You didn't do any research or have anything to do with how long this drug has been around.
No, someone else invented it before I was born.
What was that?
Someone invented it before I was born.
Great. That's a great point.
And
what you did is it was already a successful drug. If you wanted to do research with society, you would have. If you wanted to do research with beneficial society,
you said it was an expensive drug.
What was that?
You said it was an expensive drug, Nick?
All drugs are expensive in a sense.
Oh, I see.
What you did is the expense and you multiplied it by
You think all drugs are expensive, Nick?
Some drugs, I mean, relative to someone in Africa, so the expensive is relative. Depending on the price of the consumer, the price which consumers pay, it's all relative. So what you did is you just come back to, well, that's fine though.
But you said the drug was already expensive? Is that right?
Depends. I mean, that's debatable. Expense is subjective to the beholder.
Okay. Anyway, so you have to get around to the part where you thought something I did was immoral.
The best part about this whole thing, though, is you want to focus on the one single point that's best for you, and that's already. Just
tell me what did you think was immoral? Be coherent.
The fact that you took a drug that has almost no competition, and you jack the price up on it at the expense of people's lives. That's very immoral.
How is it? Hold on, slow down. I know you're hysterical, but try to make.
No, I'm making factual points. You don't have a coherent.
Yeah, but you're not making points that are furthering your argument. To make.
No, well, they are, and I'm going to continue to more points because you want to.
Slow down. So tell me what part.
Did it legal? You're seriously roadkill. Continue though. I'll let you make your point.
That's great. Tell me what part was immoral.
The part where you took a drug that has no competition, so there's no other solution.
What part was immoral? Did you feel was wrong?
The part where you took a drug and you jacked the price up to the point where it restricts access in certain ways, maybe directly or indirectly to people's lives at the expense, and it will thus kill people indirectly or directly.
Okay, so I don't think that's right.
Well, you can think whatever you want. The facts speak for themselves. Regardless, let's continue to another point.
Nick, no, slow down. I'm allowed to respond to this. I'm not just gonna.
You can make your response. There's not much rationale that you can make in regards to the truth. But sure, make your point.
Why do you think it restricts access?
Are you kidding me? If I tell you, let's say you get paid $5 a day. It's a small number. We're doing it for theoretical and hypothetical purposes. If I charge you $15 for a drug, can you pay that? No, you cannot. It restricts access directly. There's nothing complicated about that. If you can't understand that, then you have a serious lack of coherence and understanding of people in America.
Have you ever had health insurance, Nick?
Just because you can afford a drug does not mean people can do it.
Nick, do you know that Americans don't pay cash for drugs, right?
They pay it indirectly, so yes, they do.
Yes, they do pay indirectly, but it's
so they do pay cash for drugs.
Really?
We just both agreed on that they pay it indirectly and sometimes directly.
They pay indirectly, but you understand that the co-pays for our drug are like $20, right?
I'm not sure what they are. Despite that,
well, I know what they are because I was the CEO of the company.
I don't know.
70% of the co-pays are $1.
I don't know exactly what the co-pay was.
I'm telling you, 70% of the co-pays are Medicaid co-pays, which are $1. The others in commercial co-pays, which are $20. So I don't know why you think it's so unaffordable. I mean, it sounds like you're just angry at yourself, maybe, or something.
Well, I'm not angry at myself. I don't consume the drug. I don't need to. So I'm sitting here objectively giving the most.
Yeah, but you don't have the facts.
You, as the CEO of the company, clearly you're going to defend your actions. Why would you advocate?
Plenty of drugs. Like, do you know? Do you know a lot about drugs? I mean, do you know that there are $300,000 drugs? Do you know
there may be, but it's irrelevant. Some drugs may cost more to produce, may have had more advanced research than needed. Yours did not.
There's plenty of drugs that are $500,000 or $1 million just because they're used so infrequently.
Let me go back to the point that you made. That drug has been around for 70 years. It didn't require $300,000 of development per pill. Who cares? The people who are dying from it indirectly. That's who people who care.
They're still getting the drug.
No, they're not still getting. Not everyone still gets the drug just because you price.
Right.
I'm sure that not everyone who has the disease is getting the drug. I'm positive of that.
Maybe someone will find someone one day who got.
Oh, maybe. So you're willing to take the risk of a hypothetical maybe that they'll get it, so I can profit off this.
No, I said maybe a really great journalist will find someone who couldn't get the drug and died, but I'm pretty sure nothing's changed. In fact, if anything, I think more people have access to the drug now.
Sure, we'll go on to some other points though, but beyond the immorality of that action.
Well, I don't think you're being a great sort of debater. You have to sort of make some logical.
Well, yeah. The only thing I have to do is facts and logic, and then you make these emotional trying to validate your morality.
I'm trying to debate with you. I'm telling you that I don't think you can find one person that's
right. Well, you're trying to debate, but you're not making rational points which follow logic. You're making emotional points.
I'm not sure. I think I am.
Well, you can think whatever you want. The facts speak for themselves, like I've said many times. Anyway, we'll continue some more points. We already see that you have a lot of followers on this website which support you. Of course they do. If they weren't supporting you, they would be on here. They wouldn't be on here. Anyway, I'll continue. And you ban them. You like to silence the people who disagree with you.
Yeah, you're here. I'm letting you say whatever you want.
No, I know but you previously tried to silence me. You don't want to.
You are annoying.
Sure. Oh yeah, someone who disagrees with you and tries to shed light on the truth.
No, you're just annoying in general.
You can say whatever you want. Anyway,
kid. You don't know shit about shit.
You're a portfolio manager for the hedge fund, MSMB Capital Management. You miss a point about $120,000 to pay for your food, clothing, and other such stuff.
I can't talk about my criminal case. As you can imagine.
Anyway, that's not only is that immoral, that's illegal. We'll continue some more points. You told people that you had a 35.77% return since inception. that number is crazy. If you really could generate returns like that, you'd be up there with Carl Icahn, Bill Ackman. You're nowhere near that, first of all. And in fact, you were losing money during that period of time. Not only is that strongly immoral, that's totally illegal.
I definitely can't talk about the facts of the case.
You could put a rationale for that. So what's your rationale for that?
The only thing I can say is all the investors in my hedge fund made a lot of money.
So right, you're trying to detract from the point, which shows that you're illegal activity.
No, you're saying that my investors didn't make money, which was alleged in the criminal indictment. I'm aware of that. It was world front page news. I'm saying that they did. We'll see at the courtroom who's right. But I can't talk about my case in great detail.
So yeah, you don't want to shed light on details which may incriminate yourself.
No, that's for the courtroom, yeah.
Right, so you don't want to incriminate yourself here, you want to incriminate yourself in the courtroom. That's fine.
My lawyers have made it clear that I'm not to discuss the case.
Yeah, that's fine. Ultimately, what's great about a good court investigation is ultimately the truth will prevail. That's fine. The SEC has done this to a lot of people, and many of the scumbags like you, they just get picked off.
We'll see who wins. We'll see who wins the case. We'll see who wins the case. Innocent.
You'll be gone. Yeah, you'll be gone in a year, buddy.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
That's the law of our
really
land.
unfortunate for you.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Well, I guess innocent until proven guilty is good for you because temporarily you can live your life and not have to worry about stuff. But pretty soon you'll be indicted, and you might not go to jail.
Well, I was indicted, so
your career in business is over, buddy. You have no chance. You're so done for in this.
So okay, that's a great opinion of yours. Let's get back to this idea that you have this enormous wealth. Tell me about that.
Well, right now you have a net worth of nothing. All your assets are freeze. Anyone in this chat who's not in debt,
frozen. What are you talking about?
So all of your money's been freezed, dude. If
show me a court order that's frozen my assets. What are you talking about?
I could go find one for you and cite it here, but I'm not going to.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Well, they have.
You made that up because you don't like me. I don't have anything frozen.
Your stuff is frozen. Your assets are frozen.
No,
like your
I had $5 million bail. I posted bail. What are you talking about? There's no freezing order.
Anyone in this chat who does not in debt has more net worth than you at this current state and time.
If what you said was true, that'd be true, but it's not.
Regardless, it detracts from the point. And even what you're saying is true, let's say your net worth is extremely high, that's sickening that you do have a higher net worth than people, despite all your immoral and illegal activities. So either way, you're still a scumbag.
Nick, you need to find a story and stick to it. I think that would be...
No, these are different points. That's a great thing. Is your life is such a fabricated process of lies and defrauding that there's so many different things you try to stick to them as they're different stories. You're right. Man. They are different stories. You've done is illegal and fraudulent activity. That's it. That's your whole life.
We'll see. Look, you sound like you could work for the government.
No, I'm not going to work for the government. I'm simply a person who sees objectively and sees through the truth. That's fine.
Look, I mean, we'll see, right?
Yeah, we will see. And then I really don't care about the case. I'm probably not going to follow it. But I mean, ultimately, the court will that you have done illegal activity.
I was charged with a very serious crime, and I will defend myself.
Very serious crimes, many of them.
Yeah. And
if the court does rule them objectively, even if let's say they take out the immoral injustice you've done in society, you will still be fucked.
That's definitely not part of the case.
No, it's not part of the case, but even if the facts of the case, just completely separate them. Because we will separate them in the court, they will separate them. And when
this is a very complicated case Nick, let me just say something. This is a very, very complicated case that costs millions of dollars.
Yes, it is. The stuff you've done is very complicated.
Shut up! Jesus Christ, your ADHD is showing. Quiet for a second.
You can call me names, but sure, make your point.
Just let me talk. Christ, all right. You know, I had you come in here. You have an opinion that's very fiery and very nasty.
No, it's very calm and rational. But
no, you're talking while I'm talking. Just stop.
If you're an attack, I'm right to defend myself. So make your point.
Well, I'm trying not to interrupt you, so please afford me the same courtesy. My point is that, yeah, I was charged with a very serious crime, and it's very complex. It will cost millions of dollars to defend. It has cost millions of dollars to defend. Will continue to. I'll probably spend well over $10 million defending myself, if not more. So just don't belittle the seriousness and the, kind of complex nature of it. You as a child can't decide whether or not I'm guilty. That's going to be in the courtroom between lawyers and a very, very complex situation. So please leave that alone. It's not for you to make a call, right? We'll see what happens in a year's time or 2 years' time or whenever this matter may conclude itself.
Yeah, you are very fortunate that I do not make the call, but like what I can do is I can cite factual evidence regarding your case, illustrating the fraudulent and illegal activities which you have done. It's a great point on that. I appreciate you making that.
No, but you don't understand. The point is that an indictment is not a conviction, right?
So yeah, you've been accused, but I'm not referring to the indictment itself. I'm referring to the actual actions that you've made, which causes.
They're alleged actions, right?
Well, sure. At this point, they're alleged, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that I believe in them.
Okay, look, you can believe in what you want, but they're allegations, not.
Traditionally, the SEC has been very reputable, and if this case falls through,
really,
you're gonna lose an extreme amount of credibility.
Really?
You're not gonna let that happen.
How do you know so much about all these different things? You sound like you're an expert in pharma. You're an expert in law. How are you such an expert in all this stuff?
Well, I do a lot of research. I read a lot. And I try to take the devil's advocate on many things. I've tried to take the devil's advocate in your position. I tried to look at both sides of your case, and after further review, I've come to the conclusion, after extensive research, that the activities you've done are not only fraudulent but strongly illegal.
Well, what would you say if I told you that I thought that you actually weren't an expert in any of these things, and that you sort of make quick conclusions that aren't very good?
Well, sir, I mean, I understand why you would like to detract from the credibility of rational points, whether or not in your best interest. That's fine. I'm sure you'd like to do that. But at the end of the day, the facts speak for themselves. I'm simply relaying them. And you can try to attack me personally for the truth. The truth is not me, but the thing is, you're so out of touch with rationale that you're trying to attack me for simply relaying rationale. That's crazy.
I think that's a perfectly normal thing to do, right? I mean, if you had a person off the street who was ranting and raving and didn't look like they changed their clothes in 2 weeks, and they said that, gee, Nick, I think your software company sucks, you wouldn't take them that seriously, right? Makes sense.
Well, I would take their point, depending on the point whether or not.
I think there's some, people have credibility based on their actions.
Actually, I really like this argument you created. You're trying to, because you know that my points are credible, but now since you know that, the only thing you can attack is me as a person. So that's great. You can attack me as a person, but my points that are credible still stand strong.
I think your points aren't points; they're opinions. Your opinion is that I'm going to lose my case, and your opinion is that you believe the government's version of the story. That's fine. You can believe that. We'll see who's right in the end.
Those are both true statements. I do believe the government's
you believe the government more than you believe me.
Evidence strongly defends that.
You believe the government more than you believe me. I haven't presented my defense.
Sure, then please present your defense.
Please be quiet for 2 seconds.
Sure.
This is one of the reasons, many reasons, we kind of ran you out of here. You were someone we liked, and then all of us decided you were extremely annoying. This is one of the reasons. Your mind goes a little bit haywire, and we don't like that. So with respect to your opinion that you believe the government more than you believe me, you haven't heard my case. You haven't heard the testimony. You haven't been in a courtroom. You're not a juror. Most people, reasonable people, logical people would say, look, before I want to decide if the government's right or Martin's right, I'm not going to read the government's case. If you read the government's case, of course it looks like that what they say is right, because they're presenting their case right there in the paper. And you're not getting wait a second, that's not exactly true, and wait, let's actually talk to that person, and let's look at this evidence. That's what a trial is for, right? In American law, that's how this works. Let me finish. So with respect to, because I know you're dying to interject and dying to interrupt because you're 18 years old, you have a lot of energy, and it comes off as annoying. We had a kid here yesterday who was 16 that reminds me exactly of you. You're impenetrable with respect to kind of the idea that you might be wrong about something. So,
are you making your point? Because if it's not,
I'm definitely not done. But
okay,
you sound like you want to interrupt. You sound like you're bristling with energy and just ready to attack. So
I'm ready to make rational, calm points. If you doesn't attack, that's very important.
Let me talk. Okay.
Sure,
So you believe the government's case. You read the indictment. It's great. Indictment's very convincing to the naked eye. All of them are. That's why they're indictments. That's why a grand jury chooses to indict. In the courtroom, there'll be a month long where we get to present our defense. You haven't seen one line of that. You haven't considered one line of that. 12 people of my peers. I don't know if you were sat on jury duty yet. I don't know if you're allowed to. I don't even know what country you live in. But eventually 12 jurors will decide, and that after listening to both sides fairly, both sides present their case. And I think that a rational person would expect, regardless of your opinion, but a rational person would expect to make their decision after hearing both sides. You talk about objectivity. That is why we do a trial, Nick.
Great. I'm really glad that you touched on that topic, because actually what I did is I came in here advocating for you first, but then once I did both research to find out both sides of the
I've
case,
never presented my side.
decision that it is in favor of the government's.
Nick, I've never presented my case.
You know what? I'm really actually very, very glad that you make that point, because the first time I came in here, I was actually an advocate of yours because I didn't know the
Nick, I've
facts.
never presented the defense to my criminal case.
Well, you said I came in here. I asked for your points, and first, I actually gave you favor of the doubt in this. I came into the situation giving you support, advocacy, without even looking at the government's case. So what I did is I took your case first. I supported it without
Nick,
rationale.
when did I defend myself?
I should not have supported you without looking
Nick,
at the evidence.
when did I defend myself on the criminal case?
Let me speak. I let you speak. Now I'm going to speak. Okay. I looked at you. I supported you first. What you did is you showed me that you were quote good under your own, because you were advocating for your own cause. What I did after that, being an objective and rational person, I looked at the data. The evidence speaks for itself, and I ruled in favor of the court's indictments because they're factual and backed by evidence, not by emotion, not my emotion like yours are.
When did I present my defense?
Well, I mean, you're doing it every day indirectly on this blab. So what you're doing is you're actually on here. You're trying to get the public to side with you as if in some way it'll help your case. The thing is, it's not. The SEC sees through jokers like you all the time.
Nick, I have never once talked about my criminal case. I'll talk about drug pricing all day long, but I will.
Well,
never
you're indirectly
talk
talking about your case.
No,
You know that.
no.
I know that.
No.
And we're talking about your case right now. So that's I love these
I
points you're
would
making.
never talk about the merits, Nick. The merits of the
Everything
case.
you're saying right now in this conversation is actually strengthening my argument, because at the core, my argument is factual. Yours is based on opinions and emotional attacks.
Look,
so at
I'm
the
just
end of the
telling
day,
you that I haven't talked about the merits of the criminal case yet. My defense. I never have.
so you haven't specified certain details that might be used in court in regards to your case, right? Because you want to make sure that when it comes down to judgment day, you're going to try to give the best fabrication possible for you. That's fine. You can twist the reality
You
so much. But
understand
at the end of the
that
day,
lying in court is a crime too, right?
We'll see this. You're roadkill, dude. You're so done.
I don't know what that means, but with respect to you want to
Roadkill
talk
means
about,
like
you want to talk about logic, right? You're
trying to kill people indirectly simply for their own financial endeavors.
So
And
logic requires a preposition and a conclusion. You would know that when maybe you finish college.
that's actually a scientific theory, but let me go back.
No, symbolic logic is something I studied very carefully. So, being a computer programmer, you could appreciate some of this. You can't just state a conclusion without a preposition, or you sort of lack grounds to do so, right? So I'm telling you that I've never once ever even outlined a summary of my defense to the criminal case, because I can't. That's for my lawyers to do in court. So you're not being objective. You read the indictment, you believe in the indictment, and that's fine. I'm just telling you that you can't claim you're being objective. Just say you're being emotional.
What you're doing is you're regurgitating again. That's what you're
No,
doing.
you haven't addressed it. I'm slowly trying to help you understand the situation.
I understand very clearly. What you're doing is just like a bunch of politicians is going on. You're regurgitating some key points that cannot be argued.
I'm slowly trying to ask you a question and get an answer out of you, which is, what defense have I ever given to the criminal allegations?
Well, you're giving indirect moral defenses. So you want
anything, any defense I gave.
So you're giving indirect defenses based on you constantly discuss immorality. In fact, that's probably why you purchased the Wu-Tang album. It sounds crazy, but I know
you're dodging the question.
No, I'm answering it very directly and very responsibly. What you're doing is you don't like the answer because of my answer.
What would Martin Shkreli's lawyer? How would he defend this indictment? What would he say in summary? And why don't you believe it?
I'm sure there's a lot of stuff he could say. If the question was what rational arguments could you provide, the answer to that would be none, because what you've done is illegal and fraudulent.
So you can't. You're lying. You can't tell me what my defenses are.
Because you don't have any rational ones. That's the thing.
How do you know?
I'm telling you the truth.
Why do you think Why do you think I'm spending $10 million for a trial? Of course I do.
Because you want the best likelihood of lessening the amount of criminal punishment that you receive.
We have 4 million pages of documents. We have 200 witnesses, 4 million pages of documents. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you're paying $10 million on your legal team because you know you need it.
I think you don't understand how this all works.
I understand very clearly how it works. I understand that you've done a lot of fraud.
You ever have a lawsuit, Nick? You ever been to court?
No, I have not. I don't do fraudulent activities.
Right, but you understand that, sometimes you can be wrongly accused of something, right?
Yeah, you can, and that's why it's important to stay objective and rational and take both sides into account and then come to a conclusion. And that's what I've done exactly. So I'm glad you really shed light on these points on objectivity, rationality, and logic. Because every single time when we go back to those three, it all rules
how
in favor.
Can you be objective?
When we turn to emotions, that's when it rules in favor of you. Actually, in some ways, and even emotionally, it rules in favor of the government because you killed people indirectly.
Okay, that's nice.
It's not nice at all, but it's the truth. But anyway,
I don't think that's right. But
it's really strange you think it's nice, though. But let's continue.
I don't think I've ever killed anyone, but I think I've saved people. But I don't think I've ever killed anyone.
I don't think you've saved people. That drug's been around for 70 years. You haven't saved anybody.
Okay.
So continue, though. Make your next point.
You don't need to tell me to continue. I know how to continue.
Sure, then do so.
I'm trying. You just have to stop talking for a second. It'd be great.
Sure. Make your point. Sure.
Okay. Can you go without even having this nervous stimuli? Just try to relax and have a conversation.
I'm being very calm and rational. All my points have been rational.
Every time you conclude, you're like, go ahead, go, yeah. Just chill out.
I haven't
for a
done that.
second. There's a reason you're a virgin.
You continue to attack me every time I make it a rational point. How about you just make rational points?
It's fun because you're 18 and you don't know anything.
No, it's not fun. It's not fun at all.
You're in a college dorm room. What do you know?
You think this case is funny and fun? You're so far out there, you don't even understand.
It can't have an argument with a child. It's very difficult. You're not processing anything I'm telling you. I have to say the same thing 8 times.
It's really unfortunate you think that.
What is the defense that you rejected? Or do you simply blindly reject all defenses I have in my criminal case?
Well, you haven't made a rational defense. You've made
because this is in the courtroom. Because I don't need to convince Nick Lim. I need to convince the judge and the jury, not you. So I'm saving my defense for that. We're preparing a year for a trial, 12 months, round the clock, 10 lawyers.
I'm glad you shed light on that point to show that you're doing as much as you can to save yourself in this court case, from preparing for over.
That's what you're supposed to do when you're a defendant. You're supposed to prepare yourself and defend yourself. You're not supposed to let the government.
Sure, definitely, and
that's how it works.
Yeah, that's completely logical statement. I agree with that. And in the case of your criminal indictment, it's very unfortunate that you cannot make an easy, rational responses to the indictments because there is no easy rationale. There is none.
How are you objectively know that?
I objectively know that because I've done the research. I've looked at the investors, the investments. I've looked at everything. I've done the research because what I did is as you know, I came in here and I advocated for you initially.
I don't know what you did or didn't do, but I'm just trying to understand.
You already cited
you keep avoiding the answer to the question. My lawyers, let me just finish real quick. My lawyers could talk to you for literally a week straight about why I'm not guilty. A week straight.
They're able to fabricate.
Hold on. Jesus. And every time I tell you that we have our case, we're going to make it, jury might believe it, jury may not believe it. Who knows? You can't tell right now, objectively.
Yeah, no.
Look, you can't tell. I can't tell. They may say, after 3-week trial, I kind of see what Martin's team was saying, but I kind of believe the government. Or they might sit there and say, I kind of think the government got this one wrong. You don't know what's going to happen. But they're going to make a really good case, in my opinion. We'll see. Maybe it'll be a shitty case. Maybe it'll be really unconvincing. Maybe it'll be really convincing. The point is, you haven't heard what they're going to say. Right?
Yeah, well, I'm actually glad you...
Let me finish. You haven't heard a word of what they're going to say. You don't know if they're going to say, well, again, I shouldn't even touch this with a 10-foot pole. My lawyers have told me not to avoid it, but you don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what their defense will be. And the law is very complicated.
Yes, you've been saying that several times.
Very, very complicated, and you do not have a law degree. In fact, you don't even have a college degree. So to judge that you think Nick Lim, 18 years old, is certain that I'm guilty, and you haven't given me the benefit of the doubt to hear my side of the story. Let me finish. To hear my side of the story. You haven't waited for a trial. You don't care. I'm guilty. That's not objective. Objective is a patient, intellectually honest, open-minded perspective that digests all information. And when there are two sides to one story, it is the height of subjectivity to listen to one of them and to ignore the other. We have deliberately, of course, we can't defend ourselves in the media. We defend ourselves in the courtroom. On drug prices, I'm an open book. Anyone can ask me about anything, except for Congress under oath, and I'll talk about drug prices to the end of the day. But with respect to the criminal indictment, we'll do that in the courtroom, and that's that. So no one's heard my side of that story. No one will for another 9 months probably. But you feel, which you're perfectly entitled to, you feel that I'm guilty. The only problem I have with that, you can feel that I'm guilty. It doesn't make a difference. Only a courtroom matters. Only 12 jurors will matter. The problem I have with it is that you think that it's an objective perspective, and it necessarily cannot be. That's my point.
Sure. So, as an objective person, I've been hearing your points all day. So you keep on contradicting yourself.
I haven't made any points on the criminal.
I've been listening to you talk. You've been regurgitating yourself. But regardless, I'll continue making some more rational, very calm points. So, one of the things I saw from what you just said is actually, I'm glad you touched on, is your main purpose is to convince the jury that you did not do anything illegal. That's actually, I'm really glad you said it. Instead of just stating your case in its actuality and with rational point, what you're trying to do is convince. See, the process isn't about convincing people. It's about making sure the truth comes out. So as a defendant, what you should do is all you should do is tell the truth. That's it. But instead, what you guys are trying to do is convince the jury and manipulate them into thinking that you're innocent.
Respond? I think that's a very naive perspective. The government... Well,
that's what you said. I mean, I cited your own statements.
I think that's a very naive perspective. There's a lot of people in the government that are going to convince the jury I'm guilty of something. This is not a black and white situation. This is a situation where both sides will be telling a version of the facts. And both sides are literally, let me finish,
very black and white.
In any courtroom, both sides are attempting to convince the jury to see their side of the story. There's nothing wrong with that word, convince.
Well, there is in the sense that in a truly objective case, nothing should try to be convinced. You simply state the facts, and if it was truly objective, then
Nick,
prosecution and defense would have the same story.
I don't know how much more naive you can get. I mean, you understand that one of the biggest things...
Every time I make a rational and calm point,
no,
you just
it's just like you belie the real nature of what law is. Of course it's supposed to be objective. I mean,
yes.
I have copies of laws. I've read 75 of these similar cases to mine. Of course it's supposed to be one set of facts, but remember, in the law there's something called scienter, Nick. Do you know what that is?
No, I do not, so please define it for me.
Of course you don't, because you don't know anything about the law.
Well, I do know quite a bit about...
Let me finish. Scienter is one of the most basic... Let me finish. Scienter is one of the most basic concepts of the law. That's like in computer programming, not knowing what a compiler is. You know what a compiler is, right?
Yep.
Because you know a lot about computer programming. Sure. Right? But you don't know anything about the law. Because you don't know what scienter is. I can tell you, you know what Nick, my point is you're trying to make a legal assertion when you don't know anything about the law. Do you know what estoppel is? No, you don't. It's okay. It's okay. I don't know a lot about computer programming. I don't know what a strongly typed language is or whatever. It's fine.
What you're doing is you're just making these fabricated...
I'm not insecure about it.
You're just trying to attack me personally. What you can do is try to make these two contingencies. Oh, if you don't know these two words, then
do you really know the law? Scienter is like a fundamental concept in law.
Right. You don't define the contingencies for understanding of law. Okay. So you can't tell me that because I don't know to maybe perhaps two words, I don't have understanding of law.
Let's be serious here for a second. You're 18 years old.
You're being very serious. This is a very serious debate, and I'm glad that we're talking about it. But sure.
Nick, stop interrupting me. So you're 18 years old. You're calling from your college dorm room. And you're making a legal opinion. You say, I think he's guilty, which is cool. That's fine. I thought OJ was guilty. I didn't really listen to the defense. We can all be subjective and emotional sometimes, but you don't know anything about the law.
Yeah, you are being very emotional and subjective right now, so I'm glad you shed light on that.
Okay, I know what you are, but what my argument is great logic. But my point is, I asked you I can ask you 20 basic questions about the law. You don't know the law.
Right, but I know your case very well.
Is it fair to say you don't really know how the law works?
I don't know the full depth of the legal process, but actually I'm glad you touched on that. Despite my lack of in-depth knowledge on how the law process works, I understand very strongly your case, even without understanding the law that much, to know, even with a little understanding of the law, I know that you're most likely guilty.
Okay, so what is scienter?
I don't know.
Okay, do you know what you need? Hold on, let me finish. I have a question for you. Do you know that to be found guilty of these charges, that scienter must exist?
I do not know that you might need to be found guilty on certain contingencies. You can elaborate on them if you'd like.
No. The charges I was charged with require scienter as a necessary precondition to guilt. So tell me how you expect the government to establish scienter. Oh,
well,
is this more complicated than maybe you thought?
You've been repeating this thing about scienter for quite a while now, and you said you'd define it. You still haven't.
I'm not going to define it for you, Nick.
Just like your lack of credibility in the law room, everything you say to the fabrication, it doesn't have any credibility. It's that simple. You can't even define it. You can't even own up to
I'm the one who knows what scienter is and knows that it's a precondition to a conviction. You're the one who has no idea what it is, and you're assuming it. Who's being objective?
I didn't make any assumptions on what it is. All I made is rational and calm arguments.
It's a necessary part of the conviction. It's a necessary part of the law. So how do you expect?
That I'm sure will be fulfilled according to the evidence.
It's okay to be confident in something and have a hunch, but
I don't have any hunch.
I see.
I'm being very rational.
You're undermining yourself by saying that you're certain of something, and you're there's no defense that possibly could be brought to bear, etc.
No, I'm not undermining myself. What I've done is I've looked at both sides. I've came in here before looking at the SEC. I've looked at the SEC. I trust what the SEC produces. Generally, they're a very credible organization. The government organization.
Many of their recent convictions have been overturned.
What was that?
Do you know many of their recent convictions have been overturned?
Well, great. That means statistically, if they only convict people who indict people who are actually guilty, I mean, statistically, you have a very high chance of being convicted.
But you understand that a very large number of their recent convictions have been overturned.
Convictions or indictments?
Convictions. An indictment is an initial complaint. A conviction is a final jury verdict.
So their final jury verdict has been overturned. Is that what you're saying?
It's called
most
an
of
appeal.
their case. What was that?
It's called an appeal.
Appeal. So they appealed. Sure.
So I think that's in fact, there's been a litany of articles recently about the lack of the SEC's credibility.
So what you're saying is SEC loses its case, they lose extreme amounts of credibility.
There's been a number of articles about this. In fact, there was some senators have been calling for the resignation of the head of the SEC for this reason. I just think you can dislike someone and dislike their morality and their ethics, and it's clear that you do that for me. But I just encourage you to
that's actually not clear. I strongly dislike you because of what you've done.
What you've read about what I've done.
No, because you're right. I've read about what you've done, and what you've done is from what I've seen from multiple sources. I've taken objectively, and I've also heard your personal statements on what you've done. So that's fine. I've taken both objective sides, what the facts say, what you say.
That's fine. I think that's great. I think someone's got to feel this way. There's very few people, so it's.
Well, you're right, because very few people respond rationally to argument. Most people are emotional, and that's why they succumb to your argument.
I think that I've proven that you're the emotional one in this.
How would you
respond to that?
I would respond by saying everything I've made is very rational. I haven't touched on emotions a single time, and in fact, you've attacked me personally at an emotional level many times in this argument. So actually, I'm really glad that you touched on this point as well. And I've been saying that a lot because you make a lot of points which are very emotional, detract from your argument, and actually support mine.
But my point is that you can't objectively think I'm guilty without just disliking me, because you don't know what my defense to the claims are.
Perfect. That's why I'm in here talking to you. And so far, I still believe.
I'm not going to tell you what my defense is. Sorry, Nick.
Right,
that's for the judge and the jury.
Also, great. I'm actually really glad because when you went to Congress and to
don't
speak.
change the subject. I mean, this is a crucial point.
Then why wouldn't you share your points?
My crucial point is that you don't know what my defense is to the criminal case.
Right, because if you were truly innocent person, wouldn't you present your defense at all times if it was truly bulletproof? Wouldn't you always present it?
Nick, you don't know what my lawyers are going to say to defend me, right?
Right, because they want to save it to the last moment so they can have the most preparation and the less.
Yeah, that's how the law works.
Yeah, but think about it like this, because I'm about to give you a factual point. If you truly were innocent, if you had complete rational backing up, then why wouldn't you present your defense at all times? Because if it's true and it's bulletproof, then nothing's.
See, again, your inexperience is showing. I'm sorry to say that. I'm not trying to be insulting, but that's not what the judge wants. The judge wants. Let me finish. Please let me finish.
Is very is none. So
it's not. It's literally. It would get us contempt of court. They always say, the judge says, we don't want this tried in the media. We want this tried in the courtroom. The evidence has to be presented in order in a courtroom for the first time, not regurgitated in the media. That's the way the law works. I can't give you my defense, so you don't know what it is. In fact, nobody knows what it is.
Well, when you're called by the government themselves to present an argument and you decline to, that likely means that
that's a totally different subject. That's on the subject of drug pricing.
So yeah, there's a compound of different elements you have that are immoral, illegal, and fraudulent.
All right. No, don't change the subject. You don't know what my criminal defense is, correct?
I've heard some statements you've made indirectly supporting your defense.
What?
I'm not sure.
And why don't you tell me what they are and why don't you believe them?
Statement is
you want to be logical?
directly supportive of your defense. Whether or not you claim a statement is in directly support of your defense is up to you. You can define whatever your defense is, but you've been making indirect statements which support your defense all day.
Tell me one part of my defense to the criminal allegations, and tell me why you don't believe it. And then I'll say you're being rational, and objective, and analytical, but you're not.
Sir, well, you said that all of your investors have made money.
Correct.
But did you specify that they made money off their investments with you?
I'm not going to elaborate.
So great. I'm glad we touched on that one, because according to this indictment and your statement you made just there, they lost money. Because you said that they've made money. Great. If I go to McDonald's and work for an hour, I've made money. That's true. But this case isn't universal to them as an investor. It's specific to them as an investor with you. And
they made money. They made money investing with me. They gave me money. They got back a lot more.
Did they do so as a result of your successful investments, or as a result of legal process forcing you to return money to them at a higher rate?
No, I just made them a lot of money. I was a great investor.
So you didn't touch on that question I asked you. You gave a point that was unbound to that, but that's fine. A person who invested money with me, they gave me a check for money. They got back out a lot more than they put in. So let's say in the case of Bill Ackman
Why
and Carl
don't you believe
Icahn,
that?
where Carl Icahn, they done an agreement with Bill Ackman, right? Bill Ackman actually did end up getting more money than he invested, right? But was that due to the course of legal action, or was that because...
I've never once been sued by an investor.
Let me go back to my point, because Carl Icahn made an investment.
Yeah, I know that case. They sued each other. I've never been sued by one of my hedge fund investors.
Yes, and Bill Ackman ultimately prevailed in that case, did he not? And Bill Ackman...
I don't care about the Ackman case. I'm telling you that investors... The Ackman case has nothing to do with this case. I know that case well. There's no parallel whatsoever.
Well, it correlates strongly with your case. And in fact, your case is much more serious and involves way more fraudulent activities.
Nick, I'm telling you that investors who gave me money, and they got back a lot more than that. Multiples of that in many cases. And they never sued me once.
What about the indictments made in regards to the specific investors? Not all investors, specific investors in regards to your case.
All of my hedge fund investors made money.
Every single hedge fund investor
not once ever sued me.
Directly or indirectly, have you lied to?
What?
It's not about whether or not they made money. It's in addition to the fact that whether or not you lied to them. That's the problem.
Look, I don't think we lied to them either. So we'll see what they say. Let's see how the court case goes.
It's not what you think.
Why don't you believe why don't you believe that they... Tell me why you don't believe me.
Well, I don't believe opinions. I look at the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. So if you haven't presented a fact, all you made is an opinion of statement.
I gave you a fact.
What's the fact?
I told you. Our investors made money.
But I asked you, did you lie to investors about returns?
I have no comment.
So, sorry, you're not willing to comment.
This is not a courtroom. You're not the government. I can't talk to an 18-year-old like you're in courtroom.
Questions that you can't handle because you have no rational response to them.
No, there's a serious legal aspect to this I can't talk about.
Right. So anything that detracts from your credibility because it's truthful, you deem as something that you just don't want to talk about.
No, it's like a legal thing, Nick. You wouldn't understand it.
Well, I understand it very well because you keep on saying that, but you haven't made any rational point regarding it.
No, but let's get back to the point. Do you know what my defense is?
I know of many of your indirect defenses, whether or not you declaim them as to be defenses of you.
Right, so explain to us, since you're so objective and analytical, why you believe the government instead of me.
Well, so far the government has presented a very rational and case
on one point that's like analytical and incisive, not general.
Okay, one of them is you took let's see here, I'll give you $120,000 from MSMB and you misappropriated it.
And that's fine. So that's a perfect example. There's an allegation in the indictment of that. What is my defense to that?
Well, your defense so far is you just said you didn't do it. You don't have any defense.
I didn't say that.
Said is you didn't do it.
I have a specific, exact response to that defense. And you don't know what it is. Because I have not told you, or I have not told anyone else.
It's going to be along the lines that you used $120,000 as part of your work expenses, so you could continue to do investment process.
You have no idea what my defense is.
It's going to be along those lines, but look, the SEC is going to see right through that bullshit, and you're going to get chopped up, dude, right on the SEC.
You know, it's not the SEC, right? This is the.
Well, they're part of. They're ones that making indictments. So they're part of the process.
That's the civil part.
Sure.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. Your case is very complex. There's a lot of criminal.
It's actually pretty straightforward. The ED&Y is the important part.
What was that? Say it again?
The ED&Y is the criminal part.
Sure.
Right? The SEC is the civil.
Perhaps.
The SEC can't put you in jail.
Well, they can make indictments, and
no, the SEC can't make an indictment actually.
Well, they can publish allegations.
Okay, do you understand what the SEC is?
I understand it. Yes, Securities and Exchange Commission.
Right. That's what it stands for. Do you understand what their power is?
Well, they have the power to be rational, make allegations based on evidence. That's what they've done.
Can the SEC indict you?
I think that what they do is they look into process and they make sure the allegations are factual. And after review, they will publish these.
No. What can the SEC do as their enforcement ability?
I don't think they do any enforcement. Actually, that's a great point.
They can enforce, but what is their mechanism?
They don't do any enforcement. Actually, what they do is they do a lot of objective research. So
that's not what they do. They investigate and enforce.
Yeah, so they don't investigate research. They do investigative research, right? No. So they've done.
Yeah, fine. They investigate. Yes.
Yeah, they've done investigative research objectively. They look at all sides of the investigation at all times.
And then what do they do?
So right now you're attacking the credibility of SEC. That's what you're doing.
No, you don't. I'm attacking your credibility. What does the SEC do when they're done with the investigation and they feel that you've done something wrong?
Right now you're attacking their credibility.
But so what does the SEC do when they've found wrongdoing?
Well, they would go through a legal process which ensures that that person who does wrongdoing is criminally punished.
What's that process called?
Due process. That's what it is.
What's it called?
That's what it's called, due process.
Do you think there's a better name for it that most people commonly use?
Sure. I mean, you could define a better name for it however you like. I'm telling you what it is.
What does the SEC do to the people they investigate if they feel there's wrongdoing?
They make sure that those people are charged in the court of law, and then make sure that these people are brought to justice.
That's a good word for it, but you're almost there. You can do it. What do they do?
Your lack of understanding or comprehension here only sheds light on the fact.
I understand the process really well. You don't, dude.
You have been saying that.
They file civil litigation. That's what
after extensive review and investigative process.
Yeah, they investigate and then file a lawsuit. That's all.
Right. So they've done it. They've done an investigation. They found you to have done these illegal activities, and now you're being charged for them. It's a very simple process.
No, it's not. It's a lawsuit. The SEC files lawsuits.
Sure, and these lawsuits have also brought light to criminal charges as well.
That's right. Now you get it.
Right. So these lawsuits are also giving. Not only are they civil and immoral lawsuits, but they're also giving criminal punishment as well.
I just want to go back to. The point earlier. So you said there was these misappropriations of funds. I think it was like $200,000.
Yes, that's one of the many allegations they have towards you.
What do you think my defense to that is, and why don't you believe it, evidently?
Well, I don't know what your defense is exactly, but I do know you've done indirectly, and I'm sure that you will fabricate a defense saying along the lines that you use these funds in hope of perhaps as part of your process of investment. That's probably what you're going to say. You're going to say this investment was not only for the company, but invested in myself because I was trying to. It's a bunch of bullshit, but you're probably going to try to make an argument.
You're not being objective. You don't know what my defense is.
You asked me a question, I responded. That's being.
Why do you think it's a bunch of bullshit? I haven't even told you what the defense is.
Right, and that's right. You're asking a question, and you haven't told me the answer that can only be provided by you. So you're not being able to hear it at all. I'm the only one.
It's because my legal case is a year from now.
It's like asking you what I'm thinking right now, but I don't tell you what I'm thinking right now. That's
right. You can't be objective about it. If you told me,
I love the lack of rationality there in that question.
No, it's Nick. You don't know what my defense is to that specific charge, right?
So then, are you going to ask me what your defense is again,
Nick? Just try to have a conversation.
Like, your argument is actually hysterical. It lacks so much rational logic. There's literally no logic or rationality to it. It's actually human.
I think a lot of people think I'm a pretty rational, logical person, Nick.
Right, a lot of supporters in this chat room, which are strong advocates, you do.
You know, I humbly submit before you to allow me one more time to try to get to this point.
Sure, I mean,
I'm not calling you names, and I'm not.
I'll let you make one more emotional point.
I'm just taking a shot at it here. Give me one more chance, okay?
Sure.
There's a specific allegation about the misappropriation of funds.
And many other allegations as well.
Okay, stop getting diverted. Try to focus on this one.
It's the same topic. You've done a lot of
I'm begging you from the bottom of my heart to try to focus on this one thing. Can you do that for me?
Yeah, we'll focus on this one point of many.
Okay. So there's a misappropriation of funds argument. Okay? I have never, ever once said anything about that very specific allegation. It's very specific. And I'm not going to pull it up, but you read it out loud. It's $150,000 misappropriated. I vigorously deny that. I'm certain I am not guilty of that. Certain. There's no possible way. I have a very robust defense to it. Nobody knows what that defense is, including you. So far, so good?
Sure, you've told your opinion.
No disagreement?
I don't know if I agree with that because I don't know what your defense is, so I can't tell you.
Point. You don't know what it is. I've never told you, correct?
I don't know what your defense in court will be. I know that you've made some defenses. I'm not sure if those will be the ones in court.
To that specific statement, are you aware of any of my defenses?
I may or may not be.
What? Do you know what I'm gonna? Are you aware of any of my defenses to that specific statement?
Well, I know of many defenses you've made. Whether or not that's the defense you use in court, I cannot tell you. You're asking me to predict.
What defenses have I made to that statement?
Right now, you're asking me to predict the future. That's what you're asking me to do.
No, I'm asking you to tell me if you're aware of any defenses I've made to that statement to date.
Yes, you said that. No, you have not done it. That's your only defense. Is you've told
I deny the allegations, but what is the content of the defense?
Well, you don't have any rational defense. What you've so far, all you've said.
I've got a very long rational defense. We've spent millions of dollars researching this.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that you have to research your defense and just show the lack of credibility in it.
Stop getting distracted. Just answer the question.
We're talking about the same subject here.
Are you aware of my defense to that specific allegation?
I may or may not be.
You're either aware of it or you're not.
Well, I know of many defenses you said, but I don't know if you're going to use them in court, so I may or may not be.
Name one of them, then.
You talked about how you said you didn't.
No, denying an allegation is not a defense. A defense is a logical, structured statement that denies the allegation with precise refutation. I didn't do any of the things in that indictment. A defense is an explanation. Are you aware of any defense to that specific allegation?
I may or may not be. I don't know, because I don't know what your defense in court will be. So you're asking me if you want to predict the future.
So you don't know what my defense is?
I may know what it is.
Okay, but you haven't heard it from me. You can guess
what my
defense is.
That would be my only source of knowing it, would be from you.
Sorry, but you don't. I've never told you what my defense is.
If I did your defense, it would come from you. Yeah.
Nick, I've never told you what my defense to that very specific allegation is. Correct?
I think you may or may not have. I'm not totally sure, but I think you might have.
But you don't know. I've
Well, I'm not
never
sure
told
about
anyone.
certain because I can't predict the future, but you may or may have told me your defense.
This isn't about the future. This is about the past. The question is, have I ever told you in my defense that specific allegation is, which for the first time you're bringing up, and I've never talked to you before at length about this.
Well, you have talked to other people about it, and I've seen
This allegation is very specific.
Let me see here. Off the top of my recollection, I cannot give you an exact example, but I may or may not have heard it. I don't know for sure if I have or not.
I've never told anyone about this defense.
All right, let's continue to the next one.
This is the major point. So you don't know what my defense is.
I didn't say that. Now you're putting words in my mouth. You're trying to speak for me
But
again.
I'm telling you that I've never told you it, and you can't remember it. So it sounds like you don't know what it is.
No, you're speaking for
remember
me.
it, you can just say
continue
it.
to speak for me. I told you I may or may not know your defense.
Well, if you know it, you can say it.
Well, just like how it goes, the same goes for
objective,
you.
right? So
If you knew your defense, and you knew the truth, you could cite it as well. So now, so what are you going to follow?
The point I'm trying to make is you're not being objective because you can't tell me.
I'm being very objective.
Please
The only
slow down
thing
for a second.
you've been
Please
consistently
slow down for a second.
subjective.
I'm trying to tell you why, right? You just say I'm being objective. I'm saying you're not being objective because you can't tell me why you don't believe in my defense because you don't know my defense. Does that make sense?
I may or may not have heard a defense from you. I don't know if it'll be the defense you use in court. That's what I've said. I've said it very many times, and you just can't seem to accept that objectivity.
If you believe that I'm guilty of this specific allegation, then you should be able to tell me why my defense fails to convince you. Can you do that now?
I believe, based on the evidence presented by the SEC, right, and the statements which I have encountered from you personally, which I will use as evidence in my understanding. Right, you're right. I'm not the court, but what I can do is I can take statements from you personally as a direct witness. I've heard your statements. I've taken as
But I
evidence from the
haven't
SEC.
answered any questions about that specific allegation.
You may or may not have. I'm not exactly.
If I have, you should be able to recollect them and say.
Just like if you're sure of your defense, you should state it as well, right? So can you please be objective here, or are you going to be consistently subjective as you have in this whole discussion?
No, I'm not gonna have the court case play out here. The point I'm trying to make is that you don't know what my defense to that allegation is.
I may or may not know it.
No, you don't know. Otherwise, you could state it. If you knew, you would state it.
I might just not want to say it.
Okay, but you said you're being objective and rational, and that's fine. But I've never told anyone my defense. Anyone, ever. But apparently you might know it.
Well, that's a lie, because you've already said that you discussed with your lawyers, so now you're lying.
Well, I've talked to my lawyers, of course.
Statement.
Yeah, I've talked to my lawyers about it. But
So now it's not anyone, now it's your lawyers. Consistently.
It's a privileged conversation. Yes, I've defended myself with my lawyers.
So you have consistently, throughout this whole argument, changed your statements. Consistently.
If you say so, I talked to my lawyers about it.
Well, it's what you just said. You just said that you changed your statements. It wasn't me, that was you.
Well, I think the fact that a defendant would talk to his lawyers is implicit. But wouldn't you say?
Oh, I'm sure it is. But lying to the public and trying to twist the truth,
Right.
that's not lying.
Slow down. I'm just trying to stay on this one point. So, you believe that I'm guilty of a specific allegation, yeah?
What the current information presented to me at this time, I'm going to go and say it leans toward you being convicted guilty.
Okay, fine. But you haven't heard from me.
I can't tell you if you're guilty or not. That would be predicting the future. But
Yeah,
I'm telling you, at this current state,
You feel that way. You feel that way. And what I'm trying to establish
based on
is
evidence,
that
I feel that way.
what I'm trying to establish is that you're not being objective about that. And do you understand what my argument is?
I've heard you say some stuff, but I'm telling you, I am being objective because I'm on your chat room talking to you personally.
Right, but
That's
I'm
the
not
most
gonna
objective
give you
I
my
can be.
defense.
Is talking to the actual defendant. That's the most objective.
And that's fine, but I'm not. This isn't a trial. I'm not going to defend myself.
Right, this is a conversation, which is very
Right.
serious.
But you understand my point, right?
I don't understand any points you've made so far in regards to that statement because they're not rational. So I don't understand lack of rationality.
What's irrational about them?
The fact that you constantly, one, contradict yourself, two, change your story, have lied several times during this
I'm
debate.
telling you that I refuse to discuss the details of my criminal case. And what I'm trying to understand is why you can make a conclusion about it that's rational.
Well, is very rational because I'm coming here talking to you. Like, do you not understand that I'm talking
But
to
it's a one side. You're listening to one side of the argument, the government side. You've yet to hear my side of the argument.
Actually, the only side I'm listening to right now is your side, the defendant's
Nick,
side.
I'm not giving you the criminal. Just because you're talking to me doesn't mean I'm giving you my criminal defense.
I'm actually being subjective in your favor. And
Nick,
even
I
with
repeat myself.
subjectivity,
Listen carefully.
let me talk. Even with subjectivity to your favor, it's still looking like you're guilty to me.
Nick, you understand that I'm not going to give you my criminal defense here, right? That
I don't understand that because you may or may not have already presented it to me.
no, I've never have. I'm going to defend myself in a courtroom.
Well, you said that, but you consistently lied throughout this whole debate, so I'm going to stand strong with my argument.
All right, whatever, man. But I have 10 lawyers and 4 million pages of documents we're going to present.
Yeah, you have a really good legal team, and even despite your very good legal
Nick,
team,
you understand.
A coherent response to this. Does this
You
show
understand,
the criminal activity itself?
Would you think it's reasonable to would you be surprised if most people thought that you were being not exactly bright about this whole thing? Like you're not reaching the right conclusions, you're entitled to your opinion, but the way you're sort of forming your opinions is very ad hominem. Would you be surprised if most people felt that way?
I would be very surprised if most people thought that way, considering that's probably not a true statement, so I'd be very surprised.
Okay, I think most people feel that way.
So right now you're speaking for other people, which you continue to do that. You speak for me, you speak for other people, you try to fabricate yourself. It's fine. You're very good at doing this. You know what? You're very good at twisting arguments, but the thing is, it's not going to work on me because I'm very coherent, rational, and calm. People who are emotional, that probably works on.
All right.
But I may or may not have your defense. I don't know until we see the day in court where I will know for sure. I don't know for sure.
I think it's pretty ad hominem. I think.
Call it what you want.
Look, everyone's been able to do the poll. Most people have voted against you. I'm sorry.
So most people of the subjective, strongly subjective, small poll case in your defense will support you. That's fine. I can go into a room of Nick Lim supporters and ask them if to see if they support me, and of course we'll see.
Nick Lim supporters?
There may be, it may or may not be. But what I do know is this is a Martin Shkreli room. If I look at the title of this web address, let me cite it for you exactly.
There's a lot of people like you that dislike me, and we can trust me. This will be on YouTube, and you'll.
I'm citing the web address exactly. Martin-Shkreli-Shkreli-show. So of course
this will be on YouTube too. You'll get the same response. I think you have a lot to learn.
Well, the people that are speaking here are only on this show.
Nick, I don't know that. I don't know that it's easy to throw around the word fabrication. I mean, you're 18 years old and you say you're the CEO of a company? Is that right? You're the CEO?
What was that?
You're the CEO of a company? You're telling me I'm fabricating? What are you the CEO of exactly?
I do a lot of. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you and your kids right now.
You're firing shots at me. How about I fire some shots at you?
Attack me personally.
No, you call me. You say everything I do is a fabrication, a fraud, a lie.
Not everything you do, but a lot of the stuff you do.
Okay, but why don't we look a little bit into Nick Lim?
Well, this is the Martin Shkreli show, is it not?
No, well, you're making personal attacks about me. I can't make them about you.
No, I'm not making any personal attacks.
You said that everything I do is a lie, fabrication, fraud. That sounds like a pretty personal attack.
I may or may not have said that, but it's a very.
I think most of us remember you making a bunch of ad hominem statements.
May or may not have. But what I do know is I cited many times the SEC's statements, allegations towards.
Yeah, we're all aware of those. Those were front page news.
I cited one of them. Let's go into another one though. Shkreli misappropriated $900,000 from MSMB Healthcare in 2013 to settle claims asserted by MSMB.
That's one of the claims as well. Do you know what my defense to that is?
Actually, now that I read this claim again, it said they probably did make money off you because it went to court and it showed that yes, you did in fact misappropriate them, and then you had to pay them back. That's what it seems like.
Do you know what my defense is to that specific claim?
I may or may not.
Okay, so you can't tell me right now.
I could tell you.
Okay,
I
so
guess.
Tell me what my defense is then.
I don't have to. I may or may not know it exactly.
You seem like you're bullshitting. Seems like you have no idea what.
You can interpret me however you want.
I mean, look, Nick. You can't bullshit me. You don't know the fine details of this case.
You're right. I can't bullshit you. All I can do is make rational
Nick,
points.
You do not know the fine details of this case. Stop pretending you do. What was the name of my co-defendant? Stop.
What was that?
What was the name of my co-defendant?
Not sure.
Yeah, you don't know this case, Nick. Stop lying. I may or may not do.
I know,
I
sir.
may or may
I
not know
know,
your
sir.
defense. You don't know shit. Just admit it. It's okay.
You're asking
I don't
me-
expect
you're
you.
asking me-
Let me finish. I don't expect you to know the fine details of a pretty boring case. It's a very lengthy, detailed case. You're busy. You're a college kid. You're doing other things. But don't pretend that you might know all the details of this case. You don't.
So despite the fact of
Just
how
say you
busy
don't.
I am, even with a small amount of time, I can come to a very conclusive understanding of the case. So
I'm glad that we should use Nick Lim to arbiter all cases going forward. With a small amount of time, you can come to the right conclusion.
well, I don't know. Well, look,
You barely
no
need
one
to
knows.
even read the
We don't
details.
know.
It doesn't
Look,
matter.
we don't-
You reach the right conclusion at the end all the time.
Nope. But what I do, though, just like you said earlier in this case, no one knows what's going to happen with that jury. You don't know. I don't know.
Right, but Nick,
right?
That's
your
when
own
I asked
statement.
you to
no,
tell
no,
me
no,
what
listen,
my defense is.
I'm citing you right now.
Nick,
you
when
don't
I
know.
ask you to tell me what my defense is, you say you don't want to tell me. And you're acting like you know. But you don't know because you don't know anything about this case.
I may or may
the law.
not know.
No, you definitely don't know. You
I may or
definitely
may
don't
not know.
I'm telling you right now, you have no clue what the defenses are to my case.
I may or may not know
Many of
them.
them are still being prepared.
I may or may not know them. Anyway, you
You have
continue.
no clue.
I may or may not know them.
No, you don't know. It doesn't
don't-
work that way.
I don't know for sure because I can't tell unless you produce them in court. The ones that I do know
Right, but
are
the point is how can you don't know you don't even know the details of this case. You're reading them.
I
as
do
you
know some.
speak.
I do know some critical details. Yeah, that's
Okay,
true.
but you don't know that you can't name the co-defendant. You don't know the difference in the SEC
yeah,
and the
factors which are
EY.
irrelevant.
Nick, come on.
So factors
to
which are
dislike
irrelevant to the
someone.
case
It's not
itself.
okay to be intellectually dishonest.
Well, factors. Well, no one's being dishonest here. I'm from my understanding.
Intellectually dishonest. You're trying
everything
to
I've
convince
said so
yourself
far-
you've reached this deeply researched, objective viewpoint, but you haven't. You don't know shit about this thing.
Well, no one has been dishonest. Well, at least on my end, I have not been dishonest in any way. Everything I've said is
No, your
my full
Twitter
understanding.
profile says that you're the CEO of a company, but I can't find any employees on LinkedIn. I was the CEO of a company, and if you go on LinkedIn, there's hundreds of people that work there. How does
Sure.
that
So
work?
my company is not large,
Is it really even a company?
but let's go back to the $900,000 from MSMB
Yeah,
Healthcare.
well, what's my defense to that? And
Well, you may-
are you so
I do
sure
not know
that
your
my defense
defense.
doesn't hold up?
What was that?
What's my defense, and how are you so sure it doesn't hold up?
Well, I may or may not have heard your defense in its
You
full,
never
but I have
heard my
heard many
defense because I've
defenses.
never presented it, Nick.
Well, you continue to say that, but I don't know for sure. But the defenses I heard from you
You've
today
heard it,
are the
then
ones.
explain what my defense is. Explain why those contracts are invalid or they were perfectly permissible. What are the case law? What are the rules? This is more complicated than you think, Nick.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's very
What's
complicated.
the
I don't
case
think. I don't think
law?
it's more.
What's the case law for what is the similar cases that come to bear on this point? You don't know this stuff. It's okay. Just stop lying.
Well, again, you're speaking for me. You continue to speak for me and make statements on my behalf that I do not approve of.
Nick,
you continue. You've
Nick,
done
you
that
don't know
several
what
times.
scienter is. How can you judge the validity of contracts? You don't know contract law.
Right. I'm not. Right. So what you've done is you've continued to speak for me. You try to tell me what I do and do not know. You don't know what I know. So yet you continue to
You don't
speak
know
for
what
me as if you
scienter
know what I
is. You
know.
told me you didn't know what scienter is.
That's true. I do not know what
It's
scienter.
like saying I'm a computer
I may
programming
know
expert.
what.
You're basically
No,
saying
listen.
you're a computer
I may
programming
know-
expert, but you don't know what
no,
a
listen.
compiler is. You don't know what code is. You don't know what executable code is. You know what machine code is. But I'm still an expert computer programmer. Trust me. That's what your argument is right now.
Listen, what you try. I may not know the definition of scienter, but I do. I may know what scienter is if it defined for me.
Again,
Just
I'm
like
not sure. I'm not
if-
sure I would. If
I
someone
never
told me they're
told
an
you the
expert
word
computer
bar, you
programmer,
can still know what a bar is.
if someone
I
told
never
me that they said, you know, this, and again, allow me to make this analogy. This is what I think you're doing. You're a computer guy. I'm not. If I said I had the best VPN software there is, and I'm sure it's going to be top of the market VPN software, and then you said, okay, how do you deal with firewall intrusions and port forwarding and things like that? And I said, what's a port? You would say that maybe I don't have the world's market-leading firewall software, wouldn't you say?
Me?
Yeah. Have you
Well, it
listened?
depends on the person who made that statement. If that person believes that with the certain qualities of that product, they have the best in the world.
But if I
to them,
told
that's
you
true.
that I programmed a new software firewall that's going to be market leader, and that it's going to replace all the new software firewalls, and I'm sure of it. And then you ask me some basic questions about security software, programming, things like that, and I couldn't answer them. Wouldn't that sort of undermine that person's credibility? And this is a completely hypothetical argument.
I do not understand that argument fully, so I can't comment on it, but I would say that no, it would probably not undermine it.
So someone saying that they programmed themselves by hand, they're not the CEO, they wrote the software, and they can't answer basic questions about the software, you don't think that person might be lying?
I don't think so.
How is that the case?
Well, I don't understand this hypothetical situation.
I'm telling you a hypothetical scenario. Martin Shkreli is telling you right now that he programmed the greatest firewall software ever. And then you proceed to ask me 5 basic questions about programming and security software, and I fucking can't answer one of them. I don't know what a VPN is. I don't know what a compiler is. I don't know what language I wrote it in. I have no clue. Don't you think I must be stretching the truth about my software program?
Well, I don't know. I'm not you, so I couldn't tell you what you think.
But it would undermine that person's credibility, wouldn't it? I mean, how can we not agree on this?
Because the hypothetical situation you presented to me, one, does not really make that much sense, so I can't understand it fully.
If I told you I was a great computer programmer, and then you asked me questions about computer programming and I was wrong, I couldn't answer basic questions. Like you said, if I said, "Hey, I'm a fantastic computer programmer," and then if you said, "What's your favorite computer programming language?"
No, it doesn't make sense. So let's say someone, I can make a more sensible argument here, because the one you made is very strange. But let me make a sensible one. So what you're implying by this argument is you're implying that to run an apple farm, you need to know the composition of an apple seed.
No, what I'm telling you is that to be a computer programmer, you have to know things about computer programming.
No. This is an apple farm we're talking about. Let me give you an analogy of an apple farm. To run a very successful apple farm, would you need to know the specific composition of an apple seed?
No, but you have to know about farming.
Basic, right? That's pretty basic to know.
If I asked you 5 questions about farming, I would say, and you can answer them, I'd say
Let's say the top of the line apple farm operator, would they need to know the composition specifically of an apple seed?
Of course not.
Oh, so
I'm telling you that if they didn't know that apples became ripe after a certain amount of time, or that you can collect them this way or that way, basic facts, I would say, maybe that person's bullshitting me. They're not an apple farmer.
Well,
right?
I would say that depending on how they operate their business, it could be very credible. I mean, right now what you're trying to do is you're trying to make assumptions on a business operator, right? In this situation, the apple farm owner. We don't know if that person could. Let's say we have somebody in like Texas, for example. Okay, this person in Texas runs a very, very good apple farm. The people who have used their apples or eaten their apples have said they're very good. But the thing is, if you ask them, how often does this person water the apples? He doesn't really know. Let's say he didn't know.
Yeah, no,
does that completely detract from all?
My point is, you don't know the facts of this case at all. You couldn't tell me who my co-defendant is.
Well, let's go back to the apple farm though. Let's go back to the apple farm.
Yeah, it's okay to not know every detail. My point is, you don't know the details of the case, or you don't know the law. So, and it's okay for you in your heart of hearts to feel like I'm guilty, but it's not an objective. If you were a lawyer at Skadden Arps and you said, I reviewed this case and I think he's guilty, we could take you seriously and say, oh, this guy's a partner at Skadden Arps. He must know his shit. I think your average partner at Skadden Arps would say, look, I read the case, it looks pretty bad, but I don't know what he's going to say in court, so let's see what happens. It's going to be exciting. That's objective.
Well, that's true. Actually, I'm glad you said that's subjective, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I don't know exactly what you're going to say in court, but I may or may not have heard your defense already today.
You've never heard it.
Under your definition, I'm being very objective, and under my own definition, I'm being very objective. So let's go back to the apple farm, though. So so if Martin Shkreli makes some sort of, let's say another person named Martin Shkreli, not you. Let's say Martin Shkreli 2.0 was some person's name, and they said, apple farm operator, if you don't know these questions, which I deem basic, anything else you say lacks credibility, would you agree that that's very logical? Would you agree that's very logical?
If they're very good basic questions, then yeah, sure.
Well, who deems whether or not they're good basic questions?
Well, it's like chapter 1 of if you don't know what a proton, neutron, electron is.
So what you're saying is you're making a very subjective argument. That's what you're saying.
If you don't know what a proton, neutron, electron is, you can't be a chemist. If you don't know what estoppel and scienter is, you can't be a legal expert.
So
reasonable, right?
Well, that's a subjective understanding that you just defined. But let's go back to
I could quiz you about the law for half an hour, and I'm pretty sure you're going to fail.
It wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't mean anything.
But no, it would mean something because you don't know what the SEC does. You don't know.
So let's go back to I'll give you a historic. Right now, you're
with
making
a rudimentary understanding of law. Let's not forget for a second, Nick, that you're 18 years old and you never studied law.
You're making subjective hypotheses, but let me give you a factual historical.
Fact. You're 18. You're not a legal student. You failed to answer basic questions about the law. These are all true. You told me yourself you don't know what scienter or estoppel is.
Look, I failed to respond to questions which you deem basic. Does not detract from my understanding of a topic. So let's say Albert Einstein, right?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Albert Einstein very well.
You don't know what a proton is, but you're telling me you're a chemist.
I didn't say I was a chemist, but
that's my analogy. You don't know what a proton is, but you're telling me you're a chemist, and that's the problem.
Is this an analogy, or are you telling me this? Because you just told it to me. Now you're
not a chemist, and I know that, and I'm sure you know what a proton is. But my point is,
whether or not I deem myself as a chemist is subjective. So now you're
Jesus Christ, Nick. My point is, you don't know shit about the law.
Well, that's what you're saying, though. That's
it's
what you're
clear to me, and I think anyone else. The facts are clear. You're 18 years old, therefore you can't know a lot about anything.
You've tried to take two different analogies, and both of them have failed.
There's a huge amount of evidence pointing to the fact that you don't know shit about the law. The first one is that you're 18. Let me make my argument, and let's hear you make your argument. How does that sound? I'll make my argument in 1 minute
I wish you would follow that
shit about the law. I'll make my argument in 1 minute that you don't know jack shit about the law, and therefore any comments you make about the law are irrelevant. The first is that you're 18. You don't know shit about anything. The second is you don't go to law school. So you can't go to law school when you're 18. You're going to school for computer stuff. You spend most of your time on computer stuff. How could you possibly know anything about the law? The third thing is you don't understand what scienter was. You admitted it. The fourth thing is you don't understand what estoppel is. You admitted it. The fifth thing is you don't understand the difference between the SEC and the EY. I could probably quiz you for 20 minutes about the law and you would know nothing. That's my argument. I rest my case. Okay, well, you made your point. Now I'm going to respond to that. So actually, those 5 contingencies that you made do not define whether or not someone's credibility in a full topic. And we can go back to the 2 points that you've made and follow up with a third point that I'm going to make. So one, you made 2 points talking about chemistry and the software development, and I also made a more even easier to understand situation of the Apple farm. So let's go back to the Apple farm because that really correlates strongly. Do you know anything about the law or not? Well, I know quite a bit about the law in certain aspects. So whether or not I understand a few certain contingencies, which you've defined as an appropriate understanding of the law, does not detract from my understanding of the law. So if I asked you a bunch of legal questions, do you think you could answer them? Depending on the questions. Basic legal questions? Well, depends on what you define as basic. So right now you're trying to make... So Martin Shkreli, this guy who's also not a lawyer, is trying... No, let me talk. Basic legal questions related to this case. You not being a lawyer, you didn't go to law school. You're not a lawyer, right? But you also are trying to define what is a basic question in law. In this case, Scienter... I'm talking... You made your point, and now you're not letting me talk. You don't define what is a credible understanding of law. Do you make the test? In this specific case, Scienter is crucial to this understanding this case. Sure, it may be one aspect. No, it is. The entire case is based on Scienter. No, the entire case is based on your fraudulent activities. Scienter may be a derivative of that. No, you don't understand the law. It's clear to me. Well, you not being a lawyer or having gone to law school, I would say that you understand the law either equally or less than me. I'm not sure though. You think so? I don't know for sure. I mean, you haven't presented. At best, I have an equal understanding of the law of you, as you. You think at best? Perhaps you have more. But I will say perhaps you have more understanding of the law. But what I do know, perhaps I don't know for sure because I can't know what you're thinking. It's impossible for someone to rationally say that they know more or less than somebody based on a few statements they've made. That's impossible to know. Rationally. Just to be clear, you've never filed a lawsuit or received a lawsuit. That is a true statement. Okay. Have you ever hired a lawyer? Yes. Okay. For what? For a contract. Okay. So you know a little bit about my background. Do you think there's any chance that you know more about the law than me? I think there may be a chance, yeah. Do you think it's a infinitesimally small chance or it's a reasonable chance? I think it's
Reasonable chance, yeah. Considering you haven't gone to law school, that would make sense to me, yeah.
Okay, so you think
Objectively, yeah.
there's a decent chance.
Yeah, objectively, yeah, it's a pretty good chance. And weighing in probably my favor.
Got it. And okay. So it's likely that you know more about law than me.
I may know less. I mean, I may know more. I can't really. You're asking me to like analyze you and tell you your understanding. I can't do that. I can't tell you what you're thinking. I can't tell you your understanding. What I will say is there's a chance it may be more, maybe less. That's the most rational response I can make to that, and it can't get more rational than that.
Can you name one big law firm?
I may or may not be able to.
I can name 10 big law firms.
So the fact that you can cite 10 big law firms gives you a better understanding.
Example. It's one example.
Right. So let's say let me go back to the apple farm. So we have an apple farm, and it's been known to have very good apples.
I'm asking you a question about law.
But this apple farm operator doesn't have internet, so he doesn't know about the other big.
He doesn't talk about the law. So
right. Well,
let's
I'm
you're welcome to ask me questions about the law.
I'm making an analogy here that's very similar to this. So if you can't comprehend this,
let's just deal with law. Forget about it. We don't need to talk about apples. Let's talk about the law. You think you're not sure? You're not sure if you know more about the law than me. Let me prove that I do. Let me prove without a shadow of doubt.
Well, you can't prove it rationally. You can try to.
No, I think I can prove I know more about law than you. And I think you can prove you know more about computer science than I do. That's fine. I'm comfortable with that. Why are you so uncomfortable that I know more about law than you do?
Because I don't know that to be true. That's why I'm saying.
You can't name one big law firm? Really?
I may or not be able to. You're
for a software company, I could say Microsoft.
You've been consistently.
Who's the Microsoft of law?
What was that?
Law firm. Who's the biggest law firm in the world?
Who?
Who is the biggest law firm in the world? Who's the Microsoft or Facebook or Google?
Well, let's go back to that. So right now, basically, your argument here is me, whether or not I know.
I'm not done yet. I'm going to make about 10 arguments.
Sure. Okay, make them.
You don't know what scienter is. You don't know what estoppel is. You can't name a big law firm. Does it seem like you're a legal expert?
Well,
does it seem like you know more about law?
You made
Does it seem like you know more about law than me? You've never had a lawsuit?
Whether or not, so let's say we have some person who's never seen a car before, right? Let's say we show them a car, and we never told them the word car. They can still know what a car is without knowing the word.
Name one very well-regarded famous lawyer.
It's I'm about to give you a very, very simple analogy, and if you can't,
I don't care about analogies. You say you know more about law than me, or you might.
Okay, well,
I'm proving to you. I am proving to you.
We're not making an analogy.
In a destructive manner that you don't know anything about the law.
No, I could know what scienter is.
Name one major lawyer.
Listen, I could know what scienter is without understanding your definition of scienter. You understand that? Does that make sense to you?
What? Name one lawyer.
I could name many, but I choose not to.
Name one major lawyer in the news.
It detracts from this point. But
you don't know anything about the law.
Well, now you're speaking for me again. You're telling me I don't know anything about the law.
Nick, if you said you knew a lot about basketball and you couldn't name a basketball player, you're full of shit. You don't know anything about basketball. You're full of shit. You don't know anything about the law, and it's okay. Just
well, you don't need to know people to know the law. Right.
Okay.
But let's go back to
know any name of any law firm, any basic legal concepts.
Can you let me speak?
Hold on. You mean to tell me that you don't know the name of any lawyers, any law firm, or any basic legal concepts?
Well, actually, I didn't.
You somehow still are not sure.
Well, actually, I didn't.
Sure if I know more about the law than you.
Could you quit lying? Because I didn't say that. I didn't say I don't understand any of that stuff.
I asked you what the answer was. The video replay will show that you said you don't know what that is.
Sure, but what you just said is not true. The thing you just said right before. Right. Listen, can we? Just because I don't know the definition of scienter does not mean I don't know what scienter is. Do you understand that?
I know, but my point is.
So you know that, but then when you make your points, you don't.
Argument to say, oh yeah, no, I know what that is.
You say you know that, but every argument you make is under the condition that you don't understand that. So that's why I'm really confused right here.
I think it's okay that you're not a legal expert. No one would expect you to be a legal expert. That's thing for adults.
Under your subjective definition of legal expert, how can you tell me, as you not being a legal expert, how can you tell me I'm not a legal expert?
I'm giving you some evidence. I could.
But you're not a legal expert, so everything you say under your own logic lacks credibility.
I could give you the name of 10 famous lawyers. I could give you the name of 10 big law firms. I could tell you some stuff about basic legal concepts.
Okay. Sure.
Could you?
Perhaps.
Let me ask you this.
I don't want to comment on that.
What is the list?
Let me tell you something, though. Let me tell you something right now.
Let me ask you one basic legal question.
You've been asking many questions, and they don't really lead to any rational points.
Can I ask you one basic legal question?
Since you've gotten them all wrong, do you want more?
You can ask me a question which you deem basic, and it may or may not be a basic question, and it might not shed light on further credibility. Sure, you can ask a question.
What is the one word where a list of documents are maintained in a legal case? What is the one word that refers to that?
I may or may not know that. I may or may not know the word, but I
you have no idea what it is.
Process. Will you speak to me again? You've been continuing to do this. You continue to fabricate statements that I made.
I'll help you out. It's a 6-letter word.
I didn't say that. Did I say? I'm gonna ask you a question though. Did I say that? Did I say that I did not know?
You have no clue. If you could answer it, you could answer it. You would answer it. You have no.
So if I took somebody who didn't know the word car and I showed them a car and I said, "Do you know what a car is?" They would say no, they don't know the word car is, but they would definitely know a car. They just saw a car.
Nick, that person shouldn't be making judgments on automobiles. That's my point.
So let's say
you're making a judgment about my case, but you don't know anything about the law.
Right. So let's say we had some person in Texas and they worked on cars quite a bit. They knew a lot about cars. They were very good mechanics. They were able to, fix cars, they were able to understand cars completely in depth to the nut and bolt and everything. But they didn't have access to like a dictionary or some sort of resource which defined all these things. Would you say that person's still an expert? I would say yes. That person has a very good understanding of how cars work.
You think you're that? You think you understand?
Despite not knowing the terminology. See, the thing is, terminology and nomenclature has nothing to do with an actual understanding of a concept. You know that. I mean, being an investor,
I do know that.
Being an investor, you know that, right? I mean, just because someone read a book, they know about the term.
I'm telling you that you don't know shit about the law.
Well, yeah, that's what you're telling me, but I know.
Tell me one thing about the law.
I've been making several points about the law.
You're wrong. You're wrong about all of them.
The most definitive thing about the law is it requires due process. That's the most important thing.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Great. So now you've made that clear. You've asked me to say one thing. I responded, and now what? The thing is, all your points lack complete.
No, that's a good start.
And what you're not doing is following due process of a logical and rational debate right here. All you're doing is making emotional points where it's completely.
I'm just trying to help you understand. You don't know anything about the law.
Well, you're not helping me. You're not helping me do anything because what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is help me do something.
You can't name one law firm.
I may or may not be able to.
The evidence seems to suggest that you don't know shit about the law.
Under your subjective analysis, so you made that conclusion. So
I'm asking you basic legal questions, right?
I've also come to the conclusion based on objectivity.
You can't tell me what a docket is?
You've been making subjective points. Let me make an objective one. Based on the objectivity here, you haven't gone to law school. You're not a lawyer, right?
That's
objectively, completely objectively, if you look at past, we have equal understanding of law. Completely objectively.
No.
Right?
No,
but subjectively,
I understand vastly more about the law than you do.
Subjectively, you're trying to define that you know more than me.
No,
it's a completely erroneous notion. I don't. It's like. I'm gonna go back to that person, the car mechanic. Just because they don't know the terminology for this certain car part does not mean that they don't know how it works, how it fully functions, how to operate it well. So your argument is based on these small definitive contingencies, and they're so invalid that it's actually humorous. Your argument is based on pure subjectivity. There's not an objective, rational response you've made.
So you can't name any law firm. You don't know what Scienter is.
Well, again, you're telling me stuff that I know, but
name one top law firm.
Well, look, you keep on saying
one top law firm.
You say, Nick, you don't know any law firms. Well, you don't know that I don't know any law firms. You don't know that.
I'm asking you right now to prove.
Listen, I'm asking you a question. Do you know that I do not know any law firms? Do you know that?
Can you tell me the name of one major law firm?
So why, if you don't know, do you keep on
saying? That's my question. Can you tell me the name of one major law firm?
I may or may not be able to. So. Okay,
it sounds like you're full of shit and you can't.
So yeah, under your subjective analysis, which completely is subjective, you don't know what I'm thinking.
Can you or can you not? I can.
Well,
I can definitively say I can.
Sure. So you definitively say you can. I say I may or may not. That means I can't.
You say maybe. So right now I know more than you do because I can say for sure.
Whether or not I respond to that question does not change my credibility in any other response to any other questions. It's just like the car part. Just because this person does not know the name of a car part doesn't mean that person doesn't understand how that car part operates fully.
Can you give me any knowledge of the law at all? Like title? What title is most criminal?
I already answered that question before. I already have. You already asked me it. I've already answered it.
Can you give me specific knowledge that would show that you're like a practitioner and you understand law?
Well, all the arguments I've made today regarding the indictments made by SEC SEC didn't make an indictment, Nick. They made allegations.
Right.
And right. So, and my response is in regards to that, whether or not I know the exact terminology would coincide with.
Just give it up. Like, you know that you don't know a lot about the law. It's okay.
Well, you're saying that. You keep on saying that, though. And
no, but you just said indictment by the SEC.
Well, like
everyone's laughing at you.
You're not. First of all, you're not laughing. Secondly, I'm not laughing.
It's funny.
Well, yeah. What really is funny
Nick,
is
you don't have to actually laugh. You were conceptually laughing.
What's really funny though, Martin, is the subjectivity and lack of rational objectivity in your argument.
You just said indictment by the SEC. You can't be indicted by the SEC. You understand that, right?
I may or may not understand that.
That's not going to recuse you from stupidity, Nick. Saying you may or may not do something doesn't absolve you of being an idiot.
Listen, just because you say I'm stupid or you say that I don't have this doesn't mean it's true. So if I go up to this car mechanic, I tell him, you know what, car mechanic, do you know what a transmission is?
If I went to a car mechanic and I said, tell me one brand of car, and they couldn't tell me, I'd go to a different car mechanic.
So from your subjective analysis, that was the ultimate.
It's common sense.
No, that's not common sense. It's actually your subjective analysis of what common sense is. And I'm really glad you shed light on that, because common sense is really just subjective to the beholder, right? I mean, if someone's
Nick,
a pirate...
You're not a philosopher, right? You're 18 years old. Like, you can't have this discussion.
Right, I have 18, and actually, you peak IQ around 18.
What school do you go to?
It's completely irrelevant.
I mean, you don't come off as a smart person.
Well, you're saying that, but you've also not been able to respond. So let's say that it is true. Let's say I'm not very smart. I've made arguments, even with a basic understanding, right, or even an advanced understanding, that
you can't have any understanding of the law. You can't name a law firm. You can't name a famous lawyer. You can't name basic things like scienter, estoppel, a docket.
You keep on talking, but you can't respond to basic.
Can you name me one branch of the law?
Well, you've responded to.
You can't do anything. You understand that you don't know this.
Interrupt me, bro.
If I asked you to name me basic computer programming stuff, what would say? C# is a language, and you write your code, and you have variables, and you have if-then statements, and you compile it, and you got a program, and you've got runtime. That's basic shit.
The very first programmer, right? Actually, that's a good analogy. So let's not
basic shit, but you don't have that for.
Well, it's what you
just
deem.
Admit you don't know basic facts about the law.
I'm not going to admit that because that's not a true statement. But yes, I do have.
You don't know what a normal person an average person would say. These are basic facts about the law. You don't know them.
So that's subjective. So that's subjective to you. You're saying that, right?
No, I think that we can bring someone else on here.
With the subjectivity and let me.
Nick, at the end of the day, the average person, there has to be a gestalt, a consensus of what basic is. And I will tell you that for chemistry, there is a gestalt basic chemistry. If you don't know what a proton, neutron, electron is,
right? So you make it an analogy. Let me make an analogy that's much simpler.
Maybe you don't know what a proton, neutron, electron is. So we'll move on to another side section of chemistry. Do you know what thermodynamics is? No, I don't know that. Eventually, you lose credibility. Let me finish. I've asked you 5 or 6 totally disparate questions about the law. There's like legal trivia, like name a big law firm, like Microsoft, Facebook, Google. You can't do that. Okay. Maybe you just don't know the names of the big law firms. Name a big lawyer. All right, can't do that either. Scienter? Nah, I don't know what that is. But maybe you still are a legal expert. But the more likely answer is that you're full of shit and you don't know anything about law.
Well, that's under your subjective conclusion. But let me go back to the analogy.
It seems pretty clear.
No, let's go back to the car mechanic. So this car mechanic, right, doesn't know any terminology, right? But every time he fixes a car, it's 100% working. The car works very well. He knows completely how every part operates at a physical level. But he doesn't know the terminology of a few subjective arguments, which Martin Shkreli has quizzed him on. I would go ahead and say that car mechanic knows a lot more about cars.
Look, maybe, man. Maybe you're right, but I think you're full of shit.
So right, your subjective opinion is that you disagree with me. That's fine. You're more entitled.
There are some objective facts.
These are so they're objective facts.
You can't name a major law firm, can you?
Well, these are. I may or may not be able to. Like again, you're telling me stuff. You're telling me my understanding. How can you tell me my understanding?
Let me ask you.
That's not rational. You understand that? That's not rational. You continue to tell me my understanding. That doesn't make sense.
You don't understand the law. You can't answer basic questions about the law.
In any sort of life.
You can't answer basic questions about the law.
This is universal, because right now I'm about to educate you on
universal. You can't answer basic questions about a subject.
So you talked about common sense. Let's talk about common logic. You can't tell someone their understanding of anything. That doesn't work like that. It doesn't. You can't tell someone their understanding. That's not how it works.
You're in college, and your professor will fail you if you fail a test. You fail my test.
So yeah. So you know what? Great point. I do not pass Martin Shkreli's subjective conclusion of what is an understanding. That's true. Yeah.
So next time you fail a test, go to your professor and tell.
Well, I don't fail tests. Actually, I get over A's on every single test, but that's fine. I mean, you can try to make all these subjective points which further your analysis, we'll call it, because it's completely.
I don't think you sort of understand how to make arguments. Nick is dumber than JoJo. Probably.
You can agree or disagree with that. I mean, my IQ's been proven to be extremely high, so I would go say that objectively, that's not true. So.
I see. Okay.
So yeah. So right now I'm making a point.
What university are you attending?
You haven't made any objective points. I think
I remember which university it was. I mean, you can still be high IQ and go to a crappy university, but I recall you go to a crappy university.
Well, it's irrelevant. So let's talk about Albert Einstein. That's a great point. So the university or institution in which you learn from does not correlate with credibility or knowledge of a subject. So Albert Einstein actually did not do very well in school, but he is very well known for being one of the most accredited scientists and coming up with the most valuable theories. So actually, I'm glad you discussed that because it just shows the lack of correlation between.
Yeah, I did go to institutions myself.
Institutions and understanding. So that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Another great point I'll bring up to strengthen the argument is Richard Branson, who didn't even graduate from high school. Very, very good understanding of business without going to business school. So I mean, if you really look at it like that, actually, I'll give another example. Bill Gates did not complete Harvard, still has a very in-depth understanding of computer science and business. Another example, Mark Zuckerberg. So you know what? I've made about 4 or 5 completely objective points right now, and you've made 1 or 2 subjective ones.
I'm in your camp, but the point is there's something called preponderance.
So you agree with, by in your camp, you mean you agree with everything I just said?
Nick, there's something called the preponderance of evidence. The preponderance of evidence suggests you don't know anything about the law and that you're an idiot.
Well, sure, you can
the
say
fact that you call yourself the CEO of a one-person company is a pretty good sign that you're an idiot.
You can say that, but what about let's say Richard Branson? He was a CEO of a one-person company back in the day. And
you don't call yourself the CEO of a one-person company.
So is he?
You need to be the CEO of something. You have to have other people around you.
Well, that's your subjective.
You're the founder.
That's your subjective understanding. But let me ask you: do you think Richard Branson is an idiot?
Having built $2 billion companies by the time I was 33, I know a lot about entrepreneurship.
I would say that I'm probably going to do a lot more than that by the time I'm 33. A lot more than that. Probably much younger. But anyway, let's continue, Mark.
I hope you do, dude. I hope you do.
Made a lot of subjective
points. My point is, I know a lot about entrepreneurship, and you're not the CEO of jack shit.
Sure, that's your subjective point.
You don't have an office.
Well, what are you? Let me ask you. What are you? What are you the CEO of right now?
I'm not the CEO of anything right now.
So he's not the CEO of anything. You hear that, guy? He's not the CEO of anything, and he's trying to attack me on my credibility based on the CEO of the company.
When I was 28, I was the CEO.
This is comical, and I'm actually really glad you made that point.
It's not comical because when I was 28,
the argument you're making detracts from your own credibility. So that's actually great.
When I was 28, I was the CEO of a public company.
Yeah, and you did so poorly that you had to step down or get fired. So actually, you know what?
Yeah.
You've been given an opportunity, and not only did you be given an opportunity, you proved that you failed, right?
Yes, and I made an enormous amount of money for my shareholders and myself. And the point is...
Listen. No, I'm speaking. You made a point, not responding.
No, I'm speaking.
You're losing credibility right now because you're not even CEO of anything. Not only did you get an opportunity...
I think it's well established that I was very well-known.
Under these unique objective circumstances, you actually have less credibility than me in almost all regards under your own subjective analysis. So look at this test. Martin Shkreli's subjective test of credibility.
Yeah, it's a preponderance of evidence that you failed to understand.
No, you failed your own test.
You don't have an office. You don't have employees. You don't have revenue. You're not the CEO.
But you're not anything. Did you get that?
Really? Okay.
You're not the CEO of anything. You said it yourself.
And?
Look, but here's the thing.
I could snap my fingers and be the CEO of whatever I wanted tomorrow.
Hey, look at this. Under Martin Shkreli's subjective list of credibility, right? You fail your own test of credibility. That's completely objective because you've made this test. You've made this test of credibility, right? And on the points that you've made, you fail your own test. How can you fail your own test? Because you're attacking me on my credibility based on the CEO of based on my
It's a
credibility on the
shitty,
CEO.
it's not a company.
But you're not even the CEO of a company. That's like
Yeah,
that's
I
like
resign.
Dude, this is so comical. You are seriously
understand.
destroying. All credibility has just been destroyed by you. You have no credibility now.
I don't agree.
You just lost all credibility because you failed your own test of credibility.
I'm not so sure that's right.
Well, I am very sure, and the replay will demonstrate that very, very clearly.
But you're not the CEO of anything, even though you say you are. You understand that, right? Like, you can't be the CEO of a company without an office or without employees, right? You got.
No, we have an office.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Cool. How many people work there?
It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Because right now you're not the CEO of anything. You got the opportunity. In fact,
was the CEO of a company.
yeah, you were, and you got an opportunity and you failed. That
a
gives
different
you
question.
less credibility. So let me ask you something. If someone took a shot at a basketball hoop and they were shooting from very close and they still made it, right? That person has a better shooting average than someone who shot from, let's say, a 3-point line and they still missed every single time. Every single time that person shot, they missed, right? Well, then there was someone who took a little layup and they made it.
Nick, you
right?
understand,
I would say
right?
that person has more shooting credibility than you. And
Nick, you understand my companies
comical
were
because-
very successful, and you would dream to have the kind of success I had, right?
I don't need to because I'm gonna be much more
I'm
successful.
glad there's a lot of people who are confident and want to have success, but you don't have any yet.
Well, I actually do. I currently do a very good service community. I protect people from their websites and keep them online. So I do a very good service community. I'm already pretty successful in my subjective.
You're telling me you do a low-end sort of service job?
I do a very high quality.
You're a repair guy?
I do a very high quality service.
You help people's websites?
Indirectly, yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to do a little better than that if you're gonna be a success like me.
Well, right, because you're really good at fabricating points. So, but I don't need to fabricate points to be like you, Aaron, because I don't want to be a criminal. Do you understand that?
There's an allegation, so we'll see. But yeah, I don't know, Nick. I think you got a lot of growing up to do.
Well, I mean, I think I want anyone to debate has really shed light on is the lack of credibility you
You
have.
have to be a little more intellectually honest.
Martin, you have an extreme lack of credibility, and that's been
Let's see
illustrated.
what some other people think. You know, let's both let's.
I'm just gonna get off because this debate's over. You're getting someone. You're getting an advocate for you. So anyway, you've proven that you don't have credibility, and I'm gonna leave this chat. So
I'm gonna go.
it's been nice talking to you. Catch you
I just
later.
want to hear what the average person wants to say, and you can respond to them.
Nick, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard in my entire
It
life.
may or not be, you know?
Literally, like, I thought that guy was pretty okay before tonight, and just point by point, he just completely destroyed every shred of respect I could ever have for him. I just feel like everybody in this whole room is stupider after listening to that argument, and it was absolute torture. I have a huge headache. That was a fucking...
That's just your subjective understanding. Like, shut up, dude.
I know.
Like, come on.
I wish I could be objective.
Does anyone agree with Nick?
I think we need to go back to the Apple Farm, guys. we definitely need to.
Like, I don't think he's ever owned a fucking car, because if I ever went to a mechanic and he said I didn't know what a Ford was, I'd be like, I'm fucking leaving. I don't trust you with my car. He's gonna put like a Nissan engine in, and my car is gonna explode.
I feel like he was just trying to prove to himself that he's an intellectual, when in fact he's just like a little shit sitting in a basement.
Yeah. Well, you know.
He may or not be. He may or may not be. I don't know. I can't tell you for sure.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of the 16-year-old kid yesterday. You know, I mean, there's the concept, the term has been invented before. It's called a know-it-all.